wanted to talk to Shawn because this is his first time ever attending the Winter Symposium.
And I thought it was good for me. I'm hoping I can take these notes I have back, kind of digest them, and have maybe put some things into practice.
Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien.
And I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon.
And I'm an active member of the association. I currently sit on the executive board for the Ohio Fire Chiefs Foundation, and I became an association fellow in 2021 as part of class number 10. The Ohio Fire Chiefs Association exists to improve the safety of Ohio by leading, representing, educating, and supporting Ohio emergency services. This podcast is not only for the members of the association, but also for any other fire and emergency service leaders. It is the purpose of the association to promote education, best practices, and study ways and means to cope with the ever-increasing need for a better understanding of the complex problems which are being presented to the fire protection and emergency services of our nation today.
And I'm joined by my co-host, Assistant Chief Joel Fry from the Napoleon Fire Department, and Fire Chief Joshua Hartberger of the White House Fire Department.
Thanks, Clayton. Hello, I am Joel Fry, Assistant Fire Chief for Napoleon Fire and Rescue. I am a current member of the OFCA, and I currently sit on the Education Committee. I am happy to be here, striving to advance the fire service as a whole.
And I'm Joshua Hartberger from the White House Fire Department. I'm also a member of the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association, and I sit on the Education Committee and the Legislative Committee.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Triple P Podcast. Today we get to be joined by Lieutenant Shawn Wittkop from Sylvania Township. Shawn's actually been a lieutenant on that truck for 24 years. Is that right? Or 23 years?
Well, I've been a lieutenant for a little over a dozen years, but on the vehicle for 24.
Okay, on the vehicle. Wow, that's great. Congratulations, 24. That is a long time, and I know that staring down at retirement here probably before too long. But we actually get to have Shawn today because we're going to talk to him a little bit about the Winter Symposium. So we're here at the Winter Symposium right now doing this recording, and we wanted to talk to Shawn because this is his first time ever attending the Winter Symposium. And so we wanted to kind of get his reaction on attending it for the very first time, what his thoughts, what the takeaways were, and then we're going to jump into something that Shawn is very, very passionate about, and that's your HERO program and the community paramedicine. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. So let's just start with talking about the Winter Symposium. So first time that came, how did you get introduced to coming to the symposium?
Actually, I was introduced through the Ohio Fire Executive Program, currently in Class 22, and that was kind of suggested, through both my reader, Chief Metz, and then also some of the staff that's down there in Columbus. So I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I can do that, and I wasn't for sure what to expect, but this has been a great 2 days to be able to come down here and just get some insight and some education, and you kind of take away maybe some things I can do, hopefully better myself.
Yeah. What was the highlight? If you can pick anything out of this very fast, because, this happens very quickly in just one overnight stay, but the highlight of this symposium, what was your favorite part?
I would say listening to Candace's lectures over the last couple of days, and that discussion about, leadership, management, because obviously I have a little bit of a role in that. I do act up sometimes and fill the roles of the battalions when they're off there in Sylvania. So it's a lot of different hats that you kind of put on at different times. And the perspective that she brought out was, it's real, it's insightful, and I thought it was good for me. I'm hoping I can take these notes I have back, kind of digest them, and have maybe put some things into practice that maybe I should do better at.
Absolutely. Yeah, she was a phenomenal instructor. We took away so much. The first class, second one this morning too, and she kept referring to this newsletter that she sends out. Yeah. And that was something that, just the few pieces that were put on there, it seems like something so simple, but it's like the communication that you hit now with almost all of your members, it's amazing.
I absolutely loved the newsletter thing. The newsletter was awesome because it was the feedback from her crew. So from her battalion, she said that she had, 60 in
60
her
people, yeah.
So if she had 60 people in her battalion and she does it through email, and then to get all the feedback of what's these little tips, tricks of the trade, whatever else. And the one very simple thing that she had put in there that was so impactful from a firefighter that was sent to her was, it was actually a fire engineer that they called him in their department. Yeah. And it was the picture of the little switch. And so, like the new people think that the O is for on and it's not. And so but that feedback came to her. She's able to put it in the newsletter. It's amazing.
The one thing that I really appreciated about the way that she brought that together is how she, the fire service is historically hard to change tradition, right? I mean, that's kind of what we do. But if you really think about it, that's kind of a new age thing. It's real, as just kind of validating what you said regarding some of her firefighters bringing that point forth. At the end of the day, the goal when we get on that fire apparatus, whether it's a ladder, an engine, maybe if it's a transport, whatever that may be, we're just hoping to affect change for that person's worst day, right?
Yep.
So those little tidbits can just make your job go so much easier. And she kind of talked about the truck companies. The 2 truck companies that come off, they were basically battle ready, and off they go. I think she said 4 minutes roughly later, she was hearing discussion about how, ventilation was completed. Comparing that to maybe another ladder company that maybe they didn't work together all the time or whatever that situation was. But just, honing your craft, honing your skills, so that way when you actually do have to go out and help somebody on their worst day, we're ready. Just great. And I honestly, I'd love to see us do that in Northwest Ohio too. I mean, because we all,
absolutely.
The tips and tricks, things, we work together so much anymore, through mutual aid and automatic aid and stuff like that. I think that would be a great little thing to somehow start. I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there for the Lucas County Fire Chiefs. Maybe you guys could consider taking that back for some discussion. That would be,
it was it was a really, really good idea. And because just, that the switch was a small example of everything else that was included in there. And just, and again, what she talked about is just, when I'll always harp on that from the bottom up that she talked about. Yes. And so that's where she's just really bringing the bottom up, and meaning that everybody in the bottom of the organization still can be impactful for the entire organization. And even if that newsletter goes, and I think, did she say that newsletter goes to all the other BCs, right? She sends it to all the other BCs.
Yeah, she said she had a pretty big distribution list, and you're spot on, and it includes the inclusion from those line members. I mean, those pieces are written by anybody within her watch, which that's huge. It's not just coming from her,
Yeah, correct. Now, so Candace was awesome, and then we had another speaker today, and all about mental health and PTSD.
Yeah, Dr. Chard.
Yeah,
that was. I really took away. I know just a little bit, very little about peer support through one of the gentlemen that works with me in my station. He's one of our leading peer support members for Sylvania Fire. Very, very smart when it comes to being able to kind of how do we move forward with this. He's taken a lot of that training. He's military also, so he probably has an entirely different perspective that I don't even know. But I thought that her comments about the assessment and some of those different things, because I don't know if you guys recall, last year I actually put a presentation together that kind of bridged that a little bit at the county, and I did talk about that EMDR a little bit. I didn't even really have a lot of knowledge of these other treatments that she mentioned, that apparently are very effective to help people to cope or to deal and to get back to feeling good, is what I kept hearing her say again and again. So that was, this whole conference has been absolutely amazing, especially for just a company officer to come down, have that opportunity to do that, basically at the suggestion of the OFCA, and now to go back and hopefully have some conversation with the fellows at station number 62 on A shift.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what it's about.
That is exactly what it's about. And, and I will say that, coming to this conference for the last few years, I think 15 or 16 was my first year that I came. And each and every year I feel like it's gotten a little better. And it's basically because of the feedback that we're all, putting out there, being honest on the surveys and letting them know. But I do want to circle back to Dr. Chard, where she really honed in on the novelties, if you will, of what's treating what treats PTSD, because that's what I took away a lot was maybe these novelty and experiments of this, like whether it be the therapy dog, how she said it's great to have a dog. Dogs are great, but it doesn't treat PTSD.
Yeah.
And when you get into all those other things of cannabis and CBD, horses and all the different things that she broke down of that, there some good, some stay away from completely. And then this jargon of, marketing that goes out to be able to push these things on that people think that they might be resolving something, but they're just not.
Yeah.
Empty promises.
Yeah. And that's scary because, individuals in those, I feel like they're just vulnerable, right? If you're in a vulnerable position, you want to be able to, solve what's going on, that trauma. And so it really takes, therapy and broke down in the ways that she talked about the congenitive and the EMDR, and there was the PE one.
Yes.
There was the PE as well. And so she just had all these ones that were broke down in a ways that I think are so much more valuable that you didn't need a whole bunch of marketing to say like, go buy a horse or, not that they're not good. She stressed that they're good to have and they might be, a coping mechanism for a very short period of time, but they certainly ain't going to resolve your PTSD and actually get to the root cause of it.
I totally agree with what you're saying there. And I guess a self-reflective thought that I had when she was mentioning the discussion on cannabis, and you just mentioned a second ago about how, it doesn't necessarily, it's not proven, I guess, if I understood her correctly, to treat PTSD.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
It's not, what does it do? I mean, it kind of masks the symptoms. And as she was just having this discussion, I work a little bit in the ERs throughout the county with my nursing background. And I just had a conversation probably in the the holidays are just kind of coming over. So back in late December, early January, I happened to pick up a little 4-hour shift. And one of the physicians I was working with, she had mentioned to me, about sedation. We were talking about, we had a patient that come in that was very sedated obviously was on cannabis and was having a lot of the GI issues that is a side effect of that,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And during that discussion, she says, it's interesting because I sat through my holiday meal. This is what she was having a conversation. And she said that my sister, who usually I fight with quite a bit, was just really chill at I guess, their Christmas dinner. And then she was looking around. I guess the brother was doing the same thing and then realized that mom was the whole room. And then finally, after sitting together for about an hour, she kind of started asking some questions. And apparently everybody in the room was trying some of these gummies and different things like that. And so she says, is this the new state of life in our country at times, utilization of that.
Yeah.
And it keeps everybody kind of sedated
Yeah.
as opposed to treating what Dr. Chard was referring to. So just kind of a side note, but it was just something I thought about. I was like, wow, I said, that actually kind of really makes sense. And it just kind of, the light bulb went on in my mind for that as to, just insightful. So what a great conference for those reasons. You can kind of tie those pieces together.
Exactly.
Yeah, now Dr. Chard, she was from University of Cincinnati, right? UH Health, and no, she didn't have her email on there, but she did have a phone number. She just talked about that if anybody wanted to, reach out to her, then she would certainly be able to have her or her team, be a part of assisting your department and just giving you different ways than, everybody we naturally just go to like, oh, well, we have an EAP. So we just naturally go to there. I think it's the easy button a lot of the times. But like that question that one guy brought up, I don't know who brought it up in there because I couldn't see who was talking, but he did bring up the question about, there is the EAP, but we're in like uncharted territories for a lot of us in the room that may have never dealt with an employee that really has some, PTSD or some mental health that needs to be helped with, of who are those correct people to, get them in line with or get them connected to. She was saying that she brought up like a sheriff and a cop, and they were able to do it in 5 or 8 sessions. That is not through and was not through their EAP. It was outside of the EAP. And I think that's a big point to take away because I can say for myself, it's always been, well, we got an EAP. That's what we have. That's who we go to. Now, having Dr. Chard gives us another phone number at least to be able to contact to find out who should we go to
Correct.
What,
and I think, part of that takeaway was, having that EAP, just like you said, it's like, okay, good. We have an EAP, a resource for our employees to use, but now it's also our responsibility to make sure, is it effective?
Correct.
And I think that's what she kept hitting on, is that, yes, there are very effective EAPs out there, and it's at least the introduction to get somebody into some type of care or assistance that they need. But again, it's our responsibility to make sure it's effective.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true.
And that just to piggyback last thought on, at least on that for myself, was she mentioned about how those different types of actually therapy, like, the discussion. So it's that human connection.
Yes.
To kind of have a conversation, because if one of our firefighters, is dealing with or having a hard time dealing with maybe a situation that they saw or were involved with, that trauma that's continuing, it sounds like that's a very effective treatment, as opposed to, you go see your family doctor and they put you on an SSRI or something like that, one of those antidepressant medications, and just kind of send you down the road. It makes me really wonder. It's like, if you're looking at therapy as opposed to like a medication, that magic pill that she kind of talked about, it's not always going to fix that. So as you mentioned a second ago, like, is it effective? So maybe as we learn more about this, I'd love to get more insight as a company officer, so that way I respond hopefully appropriately, not only to my own thoughts, but also to those that are on the crew there at the station, that if they're having a challenge, it's like, hey, can we help you out, or whatever that may be. Obviously we have the peer support, so I'll lean on them, in some respects to maybe start that process, but just a very insightful conference to really think about.
Yeah, well, and that, I just was just thinking about that when you were saying, like, so great conversation about Dr. Chard, and just kind of a little insight on the level of, speakers that are coming to this conference. So let's go back to yesterday. So you arrived. So tell us about what time did you get in? Tell the audience that would be listening, like what the day looks like on your very first day. And did you feel lost at any time? Who did you reach out to? Who'd you talk to? How did all that kind of go for you?
Well, I reached out to Chief Ram a little bit, and obviously had mentioned that in passing there with Chief Nye the other day when I stopped into Sylvania. I said, I was planning on coming down, kind of, had talked to him about it briefly. But then I got here, obviously we had the website was showing us the daily activities, so it kind of laid out that blueprint, for the stuff. So you could come down here, you could tour the State House, and then obviously the introductions, and then the legislative update, and then obviously getting into some of Candace's discussion prior to going over to the State House to have some conversation with the senators and the elected officials later on. Just a very, very organized and very well put together. And and today was the same way.
How was that as far as like the legislative update? When Steve gets up there, Michelle gets up there and talks about all the bills, because that's a huge takeaway for me, because like usually a lot of times it's, that there's things working through the House or the Senate, or they're getting introduced, but you just don't know what phase they are, how important they are, but most importantly, where does the Ohio Fire Chiefs and us as a state, look or view? Do we support? Do we not support? And I like to have that feedback and have those individuals be able to kind of give us the breakdown before we go over to the State House. So did you take a lot away from that?
I tried to, as much as I could. That was obviously probably one of my first exposures to that ever. As you mentioned a second ago, the preparation that they put into that, from the OFCA, that page, the document that was created to kind of discuss some of those things I'd never even heard of.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
But it's so vital. And I'm just, from a company officer standpoint, obviously you guys are chiefs and you're managing this every day. You're trying to affect that, that change, and you're leading that throughout the state. You're having those conversations with the elected officials. But from a company officer perspective, I can go back and share this with the guys and just say, hey, this is some of the stuff that's going on at the State House to try to fund us to make sure that we have a functioning, radio system, some of those types of things.
Yes.
And I couldn't help but think about some of the conversation that's ensued over the past few months with the aging system that we kind of have back home, when it comes to the discussion with the hospitals.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, is there a little bit of a relationship between this? So the state's trying to move forward with this, and they're doing that because what we've always had for years is maybe just no longer usable.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I may not be 100% correct with that, but it's like it really just starts to connect the dots. So I guess from this entire presentation, the legislative update, just to get that basic knowledge of the Marks radios. You think about some of those little tolls that they put on our cell phone surcharges and stuff like that, to be able to fund that. So that way we have an effective, progressive 911 system, to be able to have our community members call that when they need help is important. That's a huge, huge thing.
Yep.
You know what I thought was also cool too is then after you get the update, you're kind of like, you feel prepared. In the last minute, we feel prepared when we're walking over to the State House, did the picture, out front, and then go inside, and they had it broke up into different tables. So they have the little bit of food there and different tables all around in the different districts, and this was in this they've kind of always. I don't know if it's been every year, but they combine it with a little bit of the EMA too. So EMA was up in that second story there, and but it makes great FaceTime for our House of Rep and our senators, and there is a lot of them that attended.
Yes.
So I know for us, we had Paula Hicks Hudson that came. And so that was great to, be able to talk to her. I've only met her one time before, and then being new in my area as a chief, then this is new to be able to meet her and to be able to have a little bit of FaceTime that's outside of the department, outside of any of that, kind of like we get into their, their playing field, if you will.
Yeah. And what I love about that too is each, may not even be your representative. You're meeting everybody that is in your surrounding area. So those, connections are being established so that they can work together. So.
Exactly. I mean, you think about, I had a little bit of discussion with Paula Hicks Hudson too, and obviously some of those talking points that we discussed here, through the legislative update was good to kind of continue that conversation. But then I also noticed that she's had a lot of questions back for us.
Yep.
Yes.
And I don't know if you guys were there when that actually happened, but much discussion about the hazmat response. I think we might have talked about that at dinner last night briefly, but that's important. I mean, it's obviously on the minds of our elected officials, and to be safe, some of those things, you think about that vinyl chloride situation there in East Palestine, and the inhibitor probably, wearing off as time goes on. That was probably one of the reasons. I mean, obviously they'll put out a review at some point, but just from a company officer perspective, I was like, yeah, this is what we kind of deal with. This is our hazmat first responder offensive, for our hazmat response. But it was really nice to see her coming back and engaging the fire chiefs, and saying, hey, what do you need?
I just had an epiphany because we just said, so like you just said that, and I always go back to this bottom up, and that we value that Candace has, harped this whole time about, the value of the people, and the people want to be just heard. They just want to be heard. And so like, think about the way that we felt at the State House by Paula Hicks Hudson just showing up, and then letting us be heard. And that is just that how valuable that is, or how it makes us feel that we're able to talk about those issues. And then not to mention there's actual conversation back. So what they have the questions about it, that she's engaged and gets bought into it and wants to help us. She wants to help
understanding.
Us. It really is.
Yeah.
So I had this little like, oh my gosh, just as much as, employees want to be heard, so do we. But you just got to have somebody to listen. And so for her to be able to make it there, and I will say for Joel, Joel being down here for your first time as well. And you actually got to meet Mr. Hoops. And so, I know that you've talked to him and seen him before, but, he has always been, him and Rob McCulley from our area, from the area in Henry County, has come up a lot of times, and have come here and spent some time on the floor. And it's just, it's a good time. So can you talk a little bit about what you talked with him about?
Yeah, well, I first off caught up with him because last time I saw him, he wasn't feeling very good. But no, just the standard, just catching up and getting the questions out there of, kind of what's pressing in the area. And he's always talking about he's from Deschler and driving through Napoleon. And so, no, we just caught up a lot on kind of the local talk.
Yeah, which is, that I think that means so much, so, but, he's been in attendance for, quite a few years. And so being able to catch up with him was really good.
He's always in attendance. And I mean, that is something, I mean, you see these people, that are very supportive and want to come in, they want to hear from us, which is awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, Follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.